Hello, welcome back. I wanted to come in here and start this vlog, or this book review video for, I can't remember what it's called. The first one's called The Lost Hero. This is the Blood of Olympus series. It follows all the main characters from the first book series, but also new main characters such as Jason, Piper, and Leo. I was right. Jason is the son, or they're all sons of demigods. We are also playing with some other stuff here as well. I really liked it. It's about, it starts out with all of them on a bus, and then they quickly get picked up by Annabeth and taken back to Half-Blood Camp, and they get to go on, and then they start this journey, this quest that's introduced at the end of the last book. It's essentially what this series is about, and it's about this quest, and I really liked it. My non-spoilery thoughts for this book. Let's go ahead and jump over to my spoilery thoughts. I think this is the best Percy Jackson book so far. I think this was a 5 for me. It's the first one that's gotten a 5. It's the first one that I would deem like a new favorite book. I absolutely love these characters, and I love the writing style here. The books feel more mature, more adult, and I just would absolutely adore the writing style. So essentially, he switched up and he made it third person, and that changed the entire game for me. Like, if it wasn't in third person, I don't want it. That's where I'm at. Like, this is great. I understood why Percy Jackson was in first person, and I think for part of that series it worked. For the majority of the rest of the series, I think it worked really well for the initial book, but I think for the other 4 books it was not working. And this is the best way to do this. I feel like we know all the characters really well, and I feel like these are not the characters we're even be following for the rest of the series. I think we're going to be jumping back and forth between them, but we still have like 5 other characters we have to introduce and like make multi-layered and things, and so this is a good way to do this. I know Nico becomes the main character in the series because a lot of people talk about a storyline here that I do know about, because like when a character is not straight, I know, and that's where I'm at. For plot wise, this is, like I said, they start on a bus. Piper believes that her and Jason are in a relationship. It doesn't end up being, I mean, they are kind of in a relationship, but when Jason starts to get back his memories, because he doesn't have any memories, he realizes that maybe there's another girl out there, which is a bit annoying, but also, like, it's the first book in a 5-book series with put some conflict in here. It's fine. I understand, Rick Warden. I'm not going to judge you for this one. Not yet, at least. I really like the relationship, though. I also really like Leo. Leo feels very much more, I mean, it's a very similar dynamic. Leo feels very much like the Grover of the situation. Doesn't feel like he really has a place to go, but I feel like his language is a bit more adult than most of Rick Warden's characters, and so there's like this level of like bigness, I guess. And then I also really like how they're all there for like very adult things, such as like stealing and stuff like that, and I'm enjoying that conversation with the fact that Leo is the son, I think it's the son of Hermes, but I could be wrong. His arm can turn, he can like light up in fire. He killed his mom, or partially killed his mom. There's also like a goddess who killed his mom as well, but like it's a whole thing. So I really like the series of that. I really like descriptions that were used to describe that. Piper is the daughter of a movie star who's very lackluster, who gets brought up into all this, and so her point of the novel is like backstabbing and things, and I think she does a really good job. And then being the daughter of Aphrodite, I think it really works because now she has this talk where she can convince anybody to do anything, and I think it's done really well throughout the book as well. Jason is the son of Zeus, but he's also not. He is, but he can speak Roman, which I really love. The Roman Empire, obviously. Man, hi, how are you doing? I really love Gladiator Times. It's one of my favorites in all literature and all like reality. That and old Hollywood are my 2 favorite things in the world. I'm excited. I'm excited to jump into more Roman gods and how that's going to be intertwined. But that's part of the reason why he didn't get to go to the Half-Blood Camp, because if he knew he was half Roman, or however it worked out, they tried to kill him. It's been proven time and time again. And so this way, that's not the case. And he got sent to this other camp that was really brutal, really ruthless. And now that's where Percy is, apparently. So that's also a B plot in this. We meet Annabeth, and she seems so much older here, which I love. It's not been very long. I think it's probably been like 6 months or something, but the way he writes her, it seems so much older. They are a couple. Percy's ship wins, but he is kidnapped and taken, and we find out at the end of the book that he's probably at this other camp that they have to go find. I really like the setup for the rest of the series. I'm very, very excited. Yeah, it was long as shit though. I'm hoping none of the other ones are as long as this, because I do think it's a bit too long. I think the Percy Jackson book should probably come in about 450 pages. This one came in about 570 pages, so it was a bit more longer than needed, but also we're setting up all these characters. And the only reason why my brain kind of justified it is the fact that there are 7 of these characters. There's a good chance that these main characters won't be main characters until later on books. I don't know. We'll see. I know Percy is in the description for the next book. One would have to believe that he is more of a main character as well as we go forward. I'll let you know. I'll update you when I finish book 2. I'm talking about the Son of Neptune today, so this is obviously the second book in the House of the Olympus series, which makes sense. This is all about Romans. As we know, this book, I wasn't really sure what we were going to do here. I had made a theory in the previous one saying, oh, I wonder if the next book will switch over to the new characters that we'll be following to build out these 7 groups, and well, we did. That is true. It did happen. So this one follows Percy as his time while they're with, like everybody else with Jason. You know how the first book takes place with those characters. This one takes place in that same exact timeline, but with Percy instead in the Roman camp, exploring the Roman camp. We first start out with him on the run, and then he ends up tearing the god to the Roman camp, and then the Roman camp possesses his prophecy. He is invited into the camp of Neptune, I think, like this little group. I want to briefly talk about the camp, this new one about the Roman gods, only for the simple fact that I found it really interesting that people like live here. There's like a whole place for a school for kids to go to, a college that's all dedicated into this world, and Percy starts to visualize this dream he had, this like experience that he had that's all just really dedicated to him and Annabeth growing up and having kids and things, because the only thing he can really remember is Annabeth, which is really sweet. It's really cool. We'll get to Annabeth here in a little bit, as she is briefly mentioned in this book. It is in brief passing. Almost all the side characters are. This book directly is for the backstories of 2 characters, which we'll jump into. Just like the last one is about the backstories of several characters. Going onwards, we meet several other characters. One of those characters being Hazel. She is also a part of, well, she died and then she is brought back to life by Nico, who she counts as her brother. So I'm assuming she's like, you know, from Hades and stuff. She died back in like the 60s, and that's right, it is Hades. 60s or 70s. She has the gift of poison, essentially. She can, like, she'll grow these gems. You give a gem to somebody, they end up dying very soon afterwards, and that's kind of like her curse. And it's in the prophecies that a man from Neptune could break this curse. That is yet to be seen, but it's still highly possible. And we also meet Frank. Frank is a klutz. Frank's whole entire thing is he learns throughout the book that he's a shapeshifter. He is also the son of Poseidon in one way, shape, or form, or Neptune, I guess. The son of Neptune is directly related back to Percy himself. Percy is very much the main character here, but Percy had 0 of the qualms that I normally had. Up until the very end of the book, where I saw a little bit of original Percy coming in, which makes sense because he's got almost all of his memories back yet. This book ends on a killer cliffhanger. I was so, like, excited that I had the next book. I'd be so mad. I don't know how long you guys had to wait in between this one and the Mark of Athena, but this book ends with, let's talk about the quest. So the quest is they have to go save someone and to go break somebody out of prison, similar to the other quest, and they have to do it in a certain amount of times, like always, like 5 or 6 days. They don't really know each other, and then they're going on this journey. I'm not going to deep dive into the journey itself, because there really is no, I mean, there's overlying thoughts here, but like, it's fine. The books are long. It's harder to condense them down into these like 6-minute clips. Some big standouts here are obviously Orion. I really liked the horse, the lying horse. I really liked how he was like a potty mouth. That was cute and fun. Not necessary, but it was fun. It was a good time. And I really liked new characters, Hazel and Frank, and I really enjoyed their connection. Now, we're trying to figure out what's going to divide this couple up, because this is a brooding couple throughout most of the novel, and that is the fact that Hazel knew someone from her past who she thought was dead, who was not dead, who is in fact Leo, is Samuel from the 60s, which makes sense. I think, like, I mean, if you look at Leo has a very interesting past and things, and I think it would make sense for him for that to be what it is. So yeah, so by this point, by the end of the book, we have Annabeth, Leo, Piper, Jason, all going on this quest, right? Then we also have Percy, Hazel, and then Frank. 7 people. I know the next one, the House of Hades, has to do a lot with Nico. I don't know how Nico will play into this, but I know a lot of things has to deal with Nico. This next book, which I did kind of start a little bit, it has a lot to do with the point of view of Annabeth. The biggest thing to take out of this before Annabeth shows up at this new camp with the warship, which they are talking about building at the end of the last one, was the simple fact that it is said that Annabeth will be the biggest problem that they will face space, and I'm having to do with this idea, this Mark of Athena, which we haven't really dived into yet. Her mother gave it to her. Her mother said, please uncurse me, or something along those lines, and so I'm curious to see what that will entail. I'm loving these books. I think I'd probably give this one like a 4.5. It didn't totally hit off for me. I felt like it kind of slogged in some places, and I don't really think the story was as cool as I was hoping it for it to be. Plus, I won't lie, just because it is a middle grade novel, I would, I'd count this as middle grade as well, even though they're a bit older. The issue that I came too was that the formula is still very similar, and so I do have to wonder what, now that the quest is finally getting picked up, if the Mark of Athena is the first book that's taking place with this quest. I mean, it seems like they're doing some other shit right now, but like, if we're going headstrong, I have to wonder if we're going to fall back into the territories of beginnings of Percy. I really like the first book of Percy Jackson. I really like the last book, but the last book did not follow the same formula, and these past two books haven't really followed that same formula, except for the middle. The middle is very much more coded with the original Percy Jackson formula of books 2 and 3, parts of 4, and that's what made those books not as great, where they would run into a god, have to defeat the said god, then have to move on. Run into a god, have to defeat the said god. This one was really interesting because they had to figure out different quizzes and stuff, and also like the gods kept coming back, like that was like the big thing. Hera kept wasn't in her place, and so like they couldn't bring the gods to death across death's door, and so like that was really interesting, but I don't know. So I'm hoping that there's another good angle for us to go at. But that being said, I very much enjoyed this book. I'm very much enjoying this series. I like it so far much better than Percy Jackson. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not, but that's where I stand, and I'll talk to you guys very soon, well, once I finish the next one. We're here to talk about House of Athena. Is that what this one called? I have some mixed thoughts and opinions. I won't lie, I just kind of went on a huge rant about this for 10 minutes. So if my thoughts are a little bit more condensed and a little more, that is the reason why. House of Athena follows our main characters of Percy, Athena, Leo, Piper, Hazel. I'm trying to think of who else is here. Jason is here. Frank is here. We are on a mission to save Nico, who is supposedly going to get murdered in Rome. And that's kind of like the whole point of the book. Also, there's this underlining current with Athena, or Annabeth in here, about her mother, obviously Athena, and this like little coin that she has. And overall, I liked the book. I felt like it was really well written. I liked a lot of elements of it. When Indiana Jones there for a minute, which I also really enjoyed. And I felt like the character development is also extremely strong across the entire board. I think everybody aged up nicely and became their own in this book. Almost everybody, I'd say, just about. I really like the difficulties and the different little placements that Rick put them in. My thing here is sometimes they're too short and sometimes they're too long. I think the pacing here is the issue, and I would agree with this entire series. The pacing is overall pretty horrible. I think they're all about the same length and about the same pace as the first book, which I gave a 5. Perfect. Everything else is a bit mixy, in my opinion. This isn't continuing being a 4.5, so the big problem with that is the length. I just felt like it went on for too long, and there's a lot of things that happen in it that I didn't really think were necessary. We went on a little too many sub tangents that I feel like, yeah, I'd rather have this as a tangent than like a relationship problem or something else that I feel like Rick would have done in the past if the book was shorter. But we also went through an entire labyrinth across the entire United States in under 300 pages. Did I like it? Not really. It's fine. I mean, I enjoyed that one more than I enjoyed other ones, but it was not one of my favorites. But I'm just saying he can do this in a more condensed version. The characters do feel more realistic and more like labyrinth. There are so many characters. I think part of the reason why the book I'm currently reading, which is the next one, is so long is because there are so many characters. And a part of the part of the way of being a writer, you have to make sure that these characters continue to be developed in interesting and very cool ways for a reader to continue onwards. I would not recommend binging this series. I think Percy Jackson was a much easier binge than the House of Olympus. I think it's because the books are so long. You want to read on. I want to continue to read them back because they end on these killer cliffhangers. This one ends with Annabeth and Percy jumping down to, falling down to TARDIS, and then everybody else going to the other version of it and going on this quest in that regard, trying to stop the god to arise, and so everybody who can die can go back to death, which they kind of solved that problem, but they also didn't solve that problem, which I'm understanding. I don't think that was very clear in earlier novels either. I think Rick should have played that one, made it much more clear, in my opinion. But that being said, I really enjoyed the writing. I really liked a lot of the things. I liked Annabeth and Percy's here. I liked their development of their relationship. I liked that Annabeth had to go on this quest. I liked how much Annabeth was in her story. I wish she was there a bit more, but I still enjoyed it. I liked the other forefront characters here. Every book has about 3 or 4 that are pretty much spotlighted, and everybody else is like a casting of a character, and I like the 3 or 4 that they were chosen. I'm enjoying Percy. I'm liking the fact that he didn't go back to his old selfish ways, which have been a problem in the past. We still haven't yet to get rid of his Achilles heel. When's that gonna pop up? Maybe what they're doing right now could do it? I really don't know. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this little review of this book. I give it a 4.5. I think Rick Riordan as a writer is getting quite good. I think the only thing he needs to work on is his action. I think it's still a bit poor, but I think everything else is like spectacular. Also the pacing and trying to figure out if it's necessary or not. I feel like a lot of this book is, but then again, I kind of disagree with myself, especially in this one, because a lot of the things that I felt like were unnecessary did pay off in the end. And so you'd be like, oh, what's the point of this tangent? And then when everybody's about to die, this is the most stakes heavy, but I never once felt them though. I will have to say the only person who I felt like could have any repercussions here was Annabeth. Everybody else I felt pretty comfortable in the regard. I also felt like the cracking of the fortune cookie was used poorly. I felt like for that to be such a big built up moment, I didn't really like the execution of it. I'm also kind of mad that the rules of it are pretty shaky. That's all I'll say on it, as we're still developing that in the next book, which I'm like 40% into. So with that being said, I'll be back for you guys to talk about House of Hades. With that being said, I will talk to you guys very soon. We finished House of Hades by Rick Riordan, the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series, the longest book in the entirety of the Percy Jackson, the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. I think it clocks in at 614 pages or something like that. I felt it. I felt the length. I don't think I would have if this was a weird time reading this book. I think I had an interesting experience with the first set as well, with the similar thing. I read the first 65% of this book, and then I had to give it back because someone else wanted to read it, and I couldn't renew the loan, and then I got the loan back, and then I finished it. I just finished it like an hour ago. And right before I left off in a place where I did not like the book, and so I think it did kind of hurt the rest of my experience. So we're gonna break these down by characters. I think that's the best way to talk about this book in a spoilery fashion. I'm gonna try to summarize kind of what happened with these characters. Once again, I do want to mention I started the book like a week ago, so like if I'm a little off balance with it, it's just because it happened a while ago, and I've read 4 other books since starting this book, and sometimes my brain can meddle. And with these stories, this being a congruent story, like a very linear story from beginning to end, once they start the quest in book 1, it's just like it's congruent from that point forward, especially between the Mark and Athena. In this one, I could get some plot details mixed up, and I'm gonna try not to, but we're gonna work through it. I also probably need a list of all the characters because there's so many characters. I start with Jason. Why? I don't know. That's the name popped in my head. Jason ends up, his big plot here, big realization is that he doesn't really want to go home to his camp. He wants to go back to Camp Half-Blood. He feels more secure there. He feels more welcoming there. Obviously, his girlfriend is also there. I can't think of anything big Jason did in this book. I'm very sorry if you're a Jason fan. I like Jason as a character as well. I just can't remember on top of my head. He had a lot of little one-off things, but I can't remember if that was like a previous book or not. So this is the problem. Either way, let's move on to Hazel, obviously his girlfriend. Hazel realizes, I think that was in the last book, that he realizes, Simon, her big thing here. No, that's Piper. What is Hazel's big thing? I'm trying to remember, because I thought Hazel was the one who controls the mist, but I think Piper is the one who controls the mist. Oh, Hazel can walk through, her big thing here, since she was attached to the dead, she can walk through the dead really easily, and so that really played a big part into the final act here when they actually get to the doors of Tartarus. So that was like her big moment in this book, was being able to guide them through this entire excursion. Then we also have Piper. Piper thing is learning how to control the mist and what that means, for instance, multiple times throughout the book, but a big one is at the very end of the book. She learns how to defeat several titans because of the mist, which I thought were really cool, and some pretty cool sequences. Also, a lot of everybody would die if she wouldn't have figured out how to move the bodies inside the mist as well. Very good. It's very much more like illusion technology, what it seems, and I think it's done pretty well. So I see it very clearly in my head, which is really cool. Okay, so let's go to Frank. Frank gets a major upgrade, body upgrade. He grows into himself. So he has his 2 gods fighting over him in his head, and he ends up tackling and killing 1,000 creatures or whatever, and getting the strength of all those creatures in him, and so it becomes like a buff 6'4" man. It's crazy. He's still a soft woolly teddy bear that we all love, but he's huge now, and that's like the biggest thing that happens to him, and that continues to be a spark throughout. He also becomes a general of the Ghost Army at the end, which is really nice, because that was something that Jason was originally, and Jason no longer being a part of the Roman side can no longer be the general because they're not going to pay attention to him. Passing that over to him made the most logical sense and helped and be a huge portion of the battle. Like, if without this character, we wouldn't really have big portions of this battle. Leo is very interesting. Leo ends up going to the camp camp that Percy went to in the Battle of Labyrinth, which ends up being brought up again. Labyrinth maybe is being built again, but Calypso falls in love with Leo over his time there. No one would send a boat for her. Calypso and things, part of the reason they had to stay together, they ended up falling in love. He is the one who takes the oath saying, I will come back for her, I will save her. We'll see if that ends up coming back. I mean, I'm sure it will. We'll see what's pin in that story. He is a much bigger and better man because of this. It seems like there's a lot of qualities of Leo that I didn't really care for that have been changed over, that are good now. So that's always good. Annabeth and Percy, their stories are tied to one. It's also tied to Bob the Titan, which I love Bob the Titan. He was such a cute and sweet little Titan, and he died, saving their lives. But their journey was getting from one place to another and really solidifying their romance, really solidifying that they're going to be together. They are endgame. This was a huge book for that. This was the book where they could have broken up. This is the book where horrible, horrible things could have happened to this romance. And did not. They persevered. They loved each other. They loved one another, you know? And so that was like their big, huge thing. Also surviving hell, which they did do. They're back on the surface ground, which is great. They also closed the doors to TARDIS, which is also, you know, the biggest goal here and succeeding. Alright, let's talk about Nico. Which I know a lot of you guys are wondering, and I saved him to last because his character, I knew that he was gay. I knew he was gay for two reasons. I happened to stumble upon a blog post that Rick did. Someone asked him a question, was Nico always planned out to be gay, or was this a character trait that it was, like, he developed into? Like, what was the plan here? And he had said, ever since Nico was originally planted in the original books, he had always had known that Nico was gay. He just didn't know where to place that storyline in there, but eventually it would come out, because there are certain things that Nico has said and done that doesn't make a lot of sense unless you know the whole story, right? I don't like Cupid outing Nico. I understand that's like a very common thing, and I'm interested to see how everybody else kind of reflected on it. To me, it almost lowered the score, and I think I was at like a 4.5 because I think this book is a bit too long for my liking. So I think it was like a 4.5. I think it's at a 4 now, which is fine. It's still a good number, and I'm still rating it really high because I still think it's a good book, and I would recommend. I really don't like the betrayal of Nico, and I'm really excited for Nico Standalone, which is the final book I'll read. I'm nervous about because of this entire thing. I'm not entirely like super impressed. I'm also not, I mean, I'm impressed with how some of the friends have reacted, only Frank knows, but how people have reacted to this information. But I'm also not like super duper impressed with how the information is being reacted to. It's a mixed bag in my opinion, and I kind of just wished it was developed more, but Nico is not a character here. He's not even like a full-fledged like POV, and so we're just seeing an undercurrent of it. I think that's the issue. It's just being outed, period. To have this, the secret divulged is just, it's just really bad. I don't ever like it when it's happening in literature. I'm fine with like love and like, you know, having a character confess their love for someone, which is what this was, but it was also something deeper than that because he has such a hate towards his sexuality, and that's proven in the pages that Nico hates himself so much. I think that's the part that I think is harder. It's because he hates himself so much and he's forced to do this thing that he doesn't want to do because he hates himself so much. And so I think, which I think is very true and it's very rivaling. He's like 14 or 15, and I think, you know, there is a truth element to this. I'm really excited for it to explore somewhere else, because I'm not really sure where I stand on it here. Plot point wise, they closed the gates to TARDIS. Now they're on two different quests. The person that originally was in love with Jason is with Nico, getting the statue of Athena back to Half-Blood Hill so they can put her there so the camps can come together for this final battle. And we have the rest of our guys who are part of the 7 on our quest to go and try to stop her before she raises. They have a strong feeling if she does raise, which is a high possibility because, you know, these are these books, that if she does raise, that they will all die. I highly doubt it. I would not be surprised based on how the books are written, based on a lot of things, that someone would die in this story, just because this is a much darker tale. I mean, without a doubt, this is the darkest Percy Jackson book I've read so far. Insanely dark, especially for the genre that it's in, the category that it's in. Like, I would even declare this like white teen. Like, this was a young adult novel. There was a lot of young adult themes. Like, this is, we're getting up there. Like, it makes me really curious for the next series, which is the Artemis one, because I want to know, like, are the Trials of Apollo series, like, I want to know if it's darker, like where do we go from here? I have to read Trials of Gods next, so I won't know. I'm actually jumping so many books ahead. Alright, with that being said, love to see you when I finish the last one. Let's close out this Percy Jackson video. Well, actually, I mean, this is Percy's books as well. So this is the last book, which is the Blood of Olympus, or Blood of Olympian, I can't remember which one, for the House of Olympus series. I enjoyed the final book quite a bit. I think the last time we talked, obviously I talked about the fourth one, and I wasn't really sure where I stood with the fourth one. I think a lot of my issues with the fourth one kind of got resolved with the fifth one. Also, this book was significantly shorter. I want to say it was at least 60 to 70 pages shorter than the last one, and that made the biggest difference in the world. I want to say, because I'm reading these so quickly. Part of the reason why is because 21 days with a hold on a library fee, this is not a lot. It's just not a lot of days. 2, originally I was going to try to get these out weekly, and obviously that has changed. We'll talk about that at the end of this video, how that changed. But with this one, I feel like the action really got undercut. And so I think me wanting less pages also undercut like part of the action. It also cut some of the emotional stakes. I feel like with Leo's death, even though I knew that Leo would not die in this scenario that was presented. Okay, hold on, I'm jumping ahead. So let's go through the characters as we always do. Percy and Annabeth really take a back seat, and I saw some people complaining about that online, but I think it's understandable that it wasn't really about Percy and Annabeth. They're obviously important to this mission, but Percy got his own book, Annabeth got her own book. I think it's more important to focus on some of these other side characters of like actually bringing Nico to the forefront. So Percy and Annabeth's like mission here was 1, to get along, which they did, and then 2, to figure out where they're headed, which is what Trials of Gods is, which I would not be, you know, if I would have read this like a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't be getting it, and I'd be like, oh my god, we got a new one set in between this, you know, point in time, because I don't know who's in Trials of Apollo. So I also don't know how important any of these characters are going forward past this point. I've since learned that Trials of the Gods, which we'll talk about, does take place after this story, but either way, we'll get there when we get there, when I do that review. So moving forward, so Percy and Annabeth, they take a backseat. They have an interesting storyline. They're just helping to get to try to figure out the war. Percy obviously is the god that brings up Gia as well. So moving on to the other lists of characters, we have Nico, and we also have Hazel, I think is what her name is. Is it Hazel? I don't remember who's running around with them. I can't think. I'm horrible with names. And then also the centaur, the one that has the pregnant wife. They're going through, and she feels really close to Nico. She understands what Nico's pain is, and she gets it. And I really like how Nico can force that pain into other people. There's the torture sequence with the one guy who he like turns into a ghost, which was such a cool sequence. The revelation of their past were also really, really cool, and I think done very well. Nico as a character, I think, is more full-fledged. I think he went from a 2-dimensional character to a full-fledged 3-dimensional character in this one, and I'm particularly looking forward to reading his book last. Like, I think it's going to be a good closer for me in this series to end on like a really good note. I think that's where we're headed, so I'm very excited to see where his relationship with this new guy Lewis goes as well. Overall, I think that's a very fascinating relationship. Moving over to Jason figures out that he wants to bring everybody back. He wants to prove that all gods can be existence in this world. All gods have a place in this world. They don't need to be showcased or shoved away like some of the gods that he meets in this one, such as the underwater goddess, who was the daughter of Poseidon, who kind of basically got, you know, kicked off the register. All these things, he makes a lot of deals, he makes a lot of wishes with gods, and his goal is going forward is to go between them and basically become like this. It's like a father, it's like a priest. It's not exactly what it is, but that's what they call him. And I think that's an excellent place for that character to go. I couldn't be more happy for him. Frank is very much the same, I think, from this book to the next book. It reminds me a lot of Tyson in the first series. I liked Frank as a character. I thought his development worked throughout the entire thing. I think his relationships worked throughout the entire thing. He just wasn't a character that stuck out to me greatly. Moving on to the female characters, we have Piper. I really enjoyed where Piper ended as well. Piper ended up kind of where she started, but as a new person, understanding who she is, understanding what the feeling of great loss is, understanding how to, you know, she truly figured out how to use charm talk. She figured out everything, and she played such an important role in the end, and so I think it was really well done. Same thing goes Hazel. I feel like Hazel is another character that is kind of slept on throughout most of the series, and I think every time she has a bigger role, she does stand out quite a bit. I understand why her character isn't as interesting as some of the others. I also quite I very much enjoyed Hazel's role in the finale. Moving on to Leo. Leo has a very interesting role in the finale. He's the one who takes down Gia. He's the one that, you know, kind of kills her. Just kind of puts her to sleep is what they end up doing to her. But he's the one who does that. And he sacrifices himself without sacrificing himself, because we learned that he did eventually get the vial that could get him, you know. So, like, it all worked out in the end. He ends up going back to Ogia, and he ends up with his girl. Like, it's all good and stuff. I think that's an excellent ending for Leo, and I think they do let the death drag on long enough. And I think with Nico not being able to feel the death, I think everything was staged perfectly for the reveal to happen that he wasn't all dead, which I figured as much as this is a children's book. I think for people who don't really have the pickups of knowing kind of where those things lay, like what makes a children's book and what's like appropriate and like all this other stuff, I think if you're not familiar with the publication route in that regard, I think this would be a very shocking death, and I think it's very well handled. And I think for everybody else, I think that reveal could be like super like useful and, I don't know, done very well. So I'm very impressed with what Rick did here. I love the third person. I think it changed these novels. I'm hoping that the rest of the series stays in this way. For they're not, but that's okay. I'm a very big fan of what he did here, and I think this was such a better series. It's darker, it's more mature, it's working on so many other levels that Percy Jackson wasn't, and it's exactly what I wanted from a series like this, especially expanding on this story. 10 books in, I think I'm on the 10th book. I think this was the 9th book in. No, this was the 10th book in. I'm reading the 11th as we speak now. I can truly say that this is a phenomenal series, and I would recommend it fully, like 110%. I think Percy Jackson is like what every other series, like, you know, City of Bones and all this other stuff, where you're like, the sequel series is just so much good. It's so much better. I know some people love Percy Jackson. I'm not trying to shit on that series. Obviously, I have a whole review. If you want to hear my full thoughts and opinions, I'll link it. That being said, let's quickly do a little bit of an outro and talk about Percy Jackson as a series as a whole and kind of explain what's coming. So we've also started live watch-alongs. I'll link the first episode in the cards as well. I'm sure it's linked throughout this video, to be honest with you. But we have officially started the live watch-alongs. We watched the first 2 episodes. We're watching the next 2 on Wednesday. I can't remember what exactly date that is. I think it's the 31st, if I'm not mistaken. January 31st is when we're watching them. Quite excited to continue onwards. The only one that's different is we're not watching them on the 14th. I think we're going to watch them Tuesday evening or Tuesday morning of that week. That week is a huge week for this house, so we'll see how it goes. Keep an eye on the community tab. Follow me over on TikTok. Also follow me over on Instagram. I'll keep you guys updated as we go, because next month, especially in the second half of next month, if there's anything I can't pre-record, we'll see how it goes in the long run. We'll figure it out together, I promise. For books, Chalice of the Gods is on its own. Chalice of the Gods is not part of a series, so you'll get a normal book review from me for Chalice of the Gods, spoilery fashion, for sure. And then we'll jump back into this 5-book review for the Chalice of Apollos, and the same for Nico. Nico is a spin-off series. It's just a spin-off story, and so he will also have its own individual vlog. Individual vlogs normally stop at 25 to 50 and then to 100, but because there are spoilers, I could update you over 25. I don't really know yet. We'll see how we go. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm very much enjoying this, this thing. Also, I'm liking that I'm like seeing through these series. It's very nice. All right, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.